Stop the wedding. The terrified scream echoed through the little church just as Nathan Carter reached for the wedding ring. Every head turned toward the entrance. A frightened 12-year-old boy stumbled inside, covered in dust, his horse collapsing outside the church doors from exhaustion. His shirt was stained with dried blood, and clutched tightly in his trembling hands was a weathered envelope sealed with dark red wax. I was told to give this only to Mr. Nathan Carter, the boy gasped before collapsing onto the wooden floor. The church fell silent. Even the pianist stopped playing. Nathan's heartbeat pounded in his ears as he slowly broke the seal. Inside was a single piece of paper. Only one sentence was written across it. If you still love Eleanor, don't let her say I do today. No signature. No explanation. Just one line. Nathan looked toward the altar. Eleanor's face had turned ghost white. She wasn't surprised. She looked defeated. Then, before anyone could ask a question, she quietly removed the engagement ring from her finger, placed it on the altar, and whispered, "I'm sorry." Without another word, she walked out of the church forever. The guests exploded into whispers. Some called her a liar. Others called her heartless. Nathan didn't chase her. Not because he didn't want to. Because something in her eyes told him she wasn't running from him. She was running from something far more dangerous. 3 days earlier, the Carter Ranch stood proudly across nearly 2,000 acres of Wyoming land. Nathan Carter was known throughout the territory as the richest rancher within 200 miles. But wealth had never changed him. He still repaired broken fences himself. Still greeted every ranch hand by name. Still believed a man's honor mattered more than his money. At 34 years old, everyone expected him to marry someone from one of the wealthy families nearby. Instead, he had fallen in love with Eleanor Brooks, a schoolteacher, the daughter of a struggling rancher who had died during one of the harshest winters Wyoming had ever seen. People couldn't understand it. What does Nathan see in that poor girl? She's got nothing. She'll inherit debts, not land. Nathan ignored every rumor. He loved the way Eleanor challenged his opinions, the way she laughed at his terrible jokes, the way she cared more about children than appearances. For nearly 2 years their love had grown naturally. Or so Nathan believed. Only one person had never approved of the marriage. Victor Hale. A powerful railroad investor whose business seemed to expand every month. He smiled often. But nobody trusted his smile. When Victor attended the engagement party months earlier, he pulled Nathan aside. "You've built something remarkable." Nathan nodded politely. "I've worked hard." Victor smiled. "And hard work deserves protection." Nathan frowned. "I'm not interested in selling my ranch." Victor laughed. "I wasn't asking." Before leaving, Victor leaned closer. "One day, you'll discover love can cost much more than land." Nathan dismissed the strange warning. Until the letter arrived. After Eleanor disappeared from the church, the entire town turned against her. The local newspaper printed the headline, "Bride abandons wealthiest rancher at the altar." Children whispered about it. Women shook their heads. Men laughed behind Nathan's back. Only Nathan refused to believe she had simply changed her mind. The letter haunted him. Especially one detail. The handwriting. It looked strangely familiar. That evening he opened an old wooden chest belonging to his late father. Inside were dozens of business agreements. Old letters. Maps. Receipts. Finally, he found it. A letter written 15 years earlier. The handwriting matched perfectly. Nathan's breathing stopped. The mysterious note had been written by Samuel Brooks, Eleanor's father. Impossible. Samuel had been dead for nearly 4 years. Nathan read the old letter again. Every curve of every letter matched. Someone had copied Samuel's handwriting, or Samuel had written the message long before his death. Neither answer made sense. Meanwhile, miles away from town, Eleanor sat alone inside an abandoned cabin deep in the mountains. Rain hammered against the broken roof. She stared at another envelope resting on the table. Unlike Nathan's letter, this one carried her father's handwriting. She had opened it the night before the wedding. Inside was another message. "If Nathan ever learns the truth before the right time, he dies." She closed her eyes. Tears rolled silently down her face. "I had no choice," she whispered. Outside, she never noticed the shadow watching the cabin from the trees. Someone knew exactly where she was. Nathan couldn't sleep. Every answer only created more questions. The next morning he rode to the Brooks Ranch. The property looked abandoned. Broken fences, empty barns, dust covering everything. While searching the old house, he noticed loose floorboards beneath Samuel's office desk. He pried them open. Hidden underneath was a small iron box. Inside, a faded journal, several property maps, and dozens of receipts. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Every receipt showed enormous payments made to Samuel over several years. But the name of the buyer had been carefully scratched away. Only one symbol remained. A black raven. Nathan had never seen that mark before. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut. Nathan spun around. 3 armed men stood inside the house. None of them looked familiar. Their leader smiled coldly. "You should have stayed married, Mr. Carter." Nathan slowly reached toward his revolver. The man laughed. Too late. The floor beneath Nathan suddenly collapsed. He crashed into a hidden cellar beneath the house. Before he could stand, the wooden trapdoor slammed shut above him. Darkness swallowed the room. Nathan lit a match. What he saw stole the air from his lungs. The cellar wasn't filled with supplies. It was filled with hundreds of leather-bound ledgers. Each one carried the names of ranch families across Wyoming. Some names had been crossed out in red ink. Others were marked with today's date. Nathan opened the nearest ledger. The first page made his blood run cold. Carter Ranch. Acquisition scheduled. 7 days. At the bottom of the page, one signature waited in elegant black ink. Victor Hale. Nathan realized with chilling certainty. His wedding had never been the real target. It had only been the beginning of a much larger plan. Nathan's hands trembled as he stared at the ledger. Carter Ranch. Acquisition scheduled. 7 days. His own name had become nothing more than another business transaction. He flipped through the remaining ledgers. The deeper he looked, the colder his blood became. Every struggling ranch within 3 counties had been listed. Families who had mysteriously lost their land. Widows forced to move away. Ranchers who had supposedly sold willingly. None of it had been voluntary. Every family had been cornered through fake debts, forged contracts, and carefully planned accidents. Victor Hale hadn't built an empire. He had stolen one. Before Nathan could examine another page, footsteps echoed above him. Someone unlocked the trapdoor. A lantern appeared. Nathan instinctively reached for his revolver. Instead, a woman's voice whispered, "Don't shoot." Eleanor climbed down into the cellar. She looked exhausted, her clothes soaked from the rain. Nathan couldn't believe his eyes. "You left me." Tears filled her eyes. "I left to keep you alive." Nathan held up the mysterious letter. "Tell me everything." She nodded slowly. "My father discovered Victor's operation 2 years before he died." Nathan frowned. "He wasn't killed by winter fever." She shook her head. "He was poisoned." The words echoed through the cellar. "My father refused to sell our water rights. Victor offered him money, then threats, and finally silence." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because every sheriff Victor couldn't buy disappeared." Nathan's anger turned into determination. "This ends now." Eleanor sadly smiled. "I hoped you'd say that." Together, they escaped through an old mining tunnel hidden beneath the cellar. The tunnel stretched nearly half a mile before opening into the mountains. Waiting outside stood the same 12-year-old boy who had delivered the letter. Nathan recognized him immediately. "You." The boy nodded. "My name's Caleb." "Who sent you?" Caleb looked toward Eleanor. "Your father." Nathan stared in disbelief. Eleanor quietly answered. "My father knew he was dying. He wrote dozens of letters before his death. Different letters. Different instructions. Each one was meant to be delivered only if certain things happened." Nathan slowly unfolded the blood-stained letter again. "So, he planned all this?" "He planned to expose Victor. But he never expected me to fall in love with you." The next morning, Nathan rode across every neighboring ranch. He carried copies of Victor's secret ledgers. At first, nobody believed him. Until one elderly rancher opened a family trunk. Inside was an unsigned contract carrying the same black raven symbol. Another widow found identical paperwork. Then another. By sunset, nearly 30 ranch families gathered outside the county courthouse. For years they had believed their tragedies were separate. Now they realized they had all been victims of the same man, Victor Hale. Victor wasn't worried. When informed that Nathan had begun asking questions, he simply laughed. People believe money. They don't believe truth. His lawyer agreed. We own the judge. Victor smiled. And the sheriff. He poured himself a glass of whiskey. This will be over before dinner. Neither man noticed the quiet secretary slipping out the back door. She carried a leather folder beneath her coat. For years she had copied Victor's secret correspondence. She had waited for someone brave enough to fight back. That someone had finally appeared. The courthouse overflowed the following afternoon. Farmers, merchants, widows, cowboys, teachers, even families from neighboring counties filled every seat. Victor entered confidently. Expensive suit. Perfect smile. As though victory had already been decided. Nathan stepped forward. You've stolen from this town for 15 years. Victor laughed. Can you prove it? Nathan placed the ledgers on the judge's desk. Victor barely glanced at them. Forged. Nathan expected that answer. Then Eleanor stood. She held up her father's journal. Inside were dates, names, payments, secret meetings. Every entry matched Victor's ledgers perfectly. Still, Victor smiled. Clever. But still not enough. Then the courtroom doors burst open. The secretary walked inside. Everyone turned. She quietly placed her leather folder beside the journal. I worked for Victor Hale for 11 years. The room became silent. I copied every illegal contract. I watched innocent families lose everything. I was too afraid to speak. She looked directly at Victor. I'm not afraid anymore. The judge opened the folder. Dozens of signed confessions. Bank transfers. Bribery records. Forged property deeds. Victor's smile disappeared for the first time. Within minutes, deputies surrounded him. The sheriff reached for his pistol. Nathan stepped between them. Don't. Everyone froze. Nathan slowly looked toward the crowd. My father always said revenge builds nothing. He turned back toward Victor. But justice does. Victor was arrested without another word. As he was taken outside, the townspeople watched silently. No cheers. No applause. Only relief. An era of fear had finally ended. Weeks later, Nathan stood in the town square beside a large iron barrel. Inside rested every debt ledger recovered from Victor's office. Hundreds of families gathered around. Nathan lifted the first book. No family should inherit chains disguised as paperwork. He tossed it into the fire. One by one, every ledger burned. Debt after debt disappeared beneath the flames. People cried openly. Some embraced relatives they thought they'd failed. Others simply watched years of fear turn into smoke. When the final ledger burned, Nathan noticed Eleanor standing quietly beneath an old oak tree. She smiled. For the first time in weeks. Her smile reached her eyes. Autumn arrived. The same little church prepared for another wedding. This time there were no whispers. No gossip. No hidden letters. No armed men waiting outside. Only friends, family, and hope. Nathan stood where he had stood weeks earlier. But everything felt different. Eleanor walked toward him wearing the same wedding dress she had never been able to wear. When she reached him, Nathan didn't immediately take out the ring. Instead, he stepped back. So everyone hears this clearly. The church became completely silent. Nathan looked into Eleanor's eyes. There are no debts. No promises made by dead men. No contracts. No conditions. If you walk away today, I'll still respect you. But if you stay, I'll spend every day earning the choice you make. Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. She smiled through them. The first wedding asked whether I could save my family. This wedding asks only one question. Nathan softly nodded. Will you marry me? She laughed through her tears. Yes. But not because I have to. Because every road I chose freely led me back to you. The church erupted into applause. Outside, as the newlyweds stepped into the afternoon sunlight, Caleb handed Nathan one final envelope. Nathan smiled. Another mystery? Caleb grinned. No. It's the last letter your father-in-law ever wrote. Nathan opened it. Inside were only 2 lines. A man becomes truly wealthy the day the woman beside him stays because she wants to, not because she has to. Nathan folded the letter carefully. He slipped it into his coat pocket beside his heart. As he and Eleanor rode across the open Wyoming prairie, the setting sun painted the endless fields in gold. Behind them lay a town finally free from fear. Ahead of them stretched a future built not on money, not on obligation but on trust. And for the first time in many years, freedom belonged to everyone.